Here we go. Got it.
Hey man, we're recording. What's going on?
Let's go. Let's go. So we're wearing t-shirts today.
You're not in a van. I'm not in a hotel room.
No,
Weird.
no. I
Back in the
posted
lab.
about I posted about the van, and my wife goes, the way you posted that, it kind of looks like we live in a van now. And we don't live in a van. So there's that part.
Just
And we
clarifying
have,
that.
yeah. So we have no like intro. There's no giant intro. Like, here's what we say every time we start this. So we're just going to start. So, Tim, we are in the 10 tenets of leading with kindness. The 10 tenets of leading with kindness. I just realized that I don't have all my lighting on in the background. So I hope people are okay with the darkness that is
Start
there.
over.
No, it's okay.
All right.
It's okay.
I love this one take wonder. Most people are so apprehensive about like, oh, it's got to be perfect.
I know.
Let's go, bro.
Well, we're
Look
5.
good.
So, okay. The 10 tenets of leading with kindness. I love this stuff. And I love having the chance to lead you or drag you or just taunt you into the open spaces here. And so we are on 7 and 8, not 8 and 9. Don't move ahead. We are on 7 and 8. These are biggies. These are biggies. Grace and acceptance. Okay. Grace and acceptance, Tim. And I want to hear your thoughts on this. Let's deal with grace first. I think we got to deal with these separately if we can keep them apart for just a moment. They're like so attracted to one another. The driving question in grace: what if we committed to creating a joyful environment each day by extending grace to everyone we work and interact with?
So it's interesting. There's a lot of people when I talk about this that say like, oh, that I don't like that word. You shouldn't use that word. You should come up with a better word than grace. It sounds like religious or something. It's just not a good word to use. But then what word would we use? Because the
That's a
whole
good
essence,
question.
the
Yeah.
whole essence of grace is you are letting me off of the hook. You are letting me pass. You are possibly forgiving me, and I don't really deserve it. Right?
Yeah.
So, like, kindness doesn't really work. Mercy could work, but it's not really the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm going to punish you, but instead, I'm just going to kind of let you off the lighter sentence. Grace is essential to a joyful environment. You cannot have a workplace, and I build joyful environments at work. That's literally what I do. And I love the fact that I spent 9 years with Meta, Facebook, and I got to the point to where I built a team that was joyful. I worked with other teams who were not joyful, but they were joyful on our projects.
Huh.
And I got to a point to where I could refuse partners who would take the joy away.
Huh.
And everybody understood. And it wasn't malicious. They weren't like, oh, Tim doesn't like you. No, no, no. Like everybody knows that Tim will have a joyful environment. He's going to do great work. His teams are going to love the work they're doing. They're going to be hyper productive. They're going to be curious, and they're going to turn out world class results. And the whole reason they can do all those things is because joy takes the fear out of life. When we know that we can make honest mistakes, that we can try things that may not work out, that there's not a consequence for every misstep or misdeed, life is happier. We can try things, we can get better results, and we can have joy. You cannot have a joyful environment or a hyper productive, hyper innovative environment if there are consequences potentially around every corner.
It's really
that is what sets this apart.
Yeah. It is interesting. I think one of the most frightening things I can imagine is a world where we can't talk about and live out grace anymore. It really does scare me to think about when you think about what it is we're really talking about. And you and I have talked about this before, but my song for life, you know, it's I don't listen to it every day, believe me, but Amazing Grace is like, and there's a line in it that never made perfect sense to me, and it was I think it's the second or third verse. I think it's the second verse, and it says, "'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fear relieved."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I had to do some reading on that because I was like, I didn't get I get my fear relieved part because it like I get that, but it was the teaching my heart to fear. And it wasn't until I thought about it and I thought, why would it teach my heart to fear? And I realized because if I recognize my need for grace, that is scary. And it's this two sides, like and in fact, in both of my books, I had to write about it. My first one, it was I called it, the one chapter is called In Dying to Lead, is called Fear, Grace, and the Unlikely Leader. And then it's just fascinating because the fear part makes it really difficult to approach. And can I read you one thing, Tim, about just what you were saying was um this is something I wrote in Compose, and I forget what I wrote, so it often feels weird to read something I wrote. But when you were talking, I was thinking, I wrote, recognizing our contribution and need for grace, even in the most difficult situations, is built on our understanding that there is more to see. It is like staring at a door you are not certain you want to open. You know there is something behind that door to see, but you're afraid because behind that door lies truth. Mm. We want to live our lives in rooms full of doors that we open and shut at will, and at times when it's comfortable to open them. We want to control seeing the reality of our contribution in our world. The most difficult doors to open are those that shed light on our shame, doubts, fears, and our mistakes. And I was like, I get why people are afraid. I get it. I get why grace is a scary thing, but it's like, oh my gosh, if I'm not a recipient of grace from other people from whom I don't deserve it, I'm done.
And that's why we need this word, mercy, right? As a leader, if you're always giving mercy, you are choosing not to apply consequences, right? We're making a distinction between malicious activity that requires consequence,
Yeah, yeah,
discipline, and honest mistakes, or maybe even intentional mistakes, because we are experimenting, we are testing ideas, right? And we know that things are going to sometimes go wrong. And here is the
yeah,
difference, right? People will say, "Well, Tim, I can't be friends with my teams like you are." And I'm like,
yeah,
"Okay, this is why grace is so important. I don't have to be your friend to have a joyful environment. I work joyfully with so many people I would never initiate contact or communication with outside of work, right?"
yeah,
But here's the point, and here is a quick story, if you don't mind.
yeah. Please.
When you lead with a joyful environment, when you have grace, we're going to get to acceptance right after this,
Yeah,
as part of the core philosophy of a team, people can make mistakes. People can actually break protocol honestly. And you can say, "Okay, well, you broke the rules, you didn't do the right thing, but I see how you got there. So let's figure out how to not get there again." But also, it does not take, and here's the fear aspect from a leader perspective, it does not take the tools of leadership away from you. I was managing a very high profile security team. Lots of people, lots of media around all the time, celebrities, like big deal.
yeah.
And we had somebody who made a mistake. It was a bad mistake.
Huh,
Then they lied about it
huh,
to try to not be on the hook,
uh-huh.
which was a violation of the trust that we had as a team work. Because I was like, "Hey, if you make a mistake, I just need the first to know so that I can figure out what happened, beat the messaging up to the higher ups and the people around us, get a hold of the problem, work it out and say, this is how we're moving forward, because I am the protector of the team with honest mistakes.
Mm,
So this person had to be let go because they
mhm,
have violated team trust. They violated
mhm,
my trust. And there was mixed feelings on the team because a lot of people like this person, right?
mm,
And so I said, all right, you know what? In like 3 days, we're having a training session. It's mandatory. Everybody has to come. And it wasn't scheduled. And we got there. We went to
huh,
the place where we were doing the training. It was supposed to be hands-on training. How are we going to handle these situations in this environment, right? And stuff people get excited for in security. And I showed up and I put the policies on the table and I said, I read a policy and I said, look, guys, you guys are going to do your own training today. This is what happened. Here's why it was unacceptable. And I do not understand how, in this type of environment, that type of activity is even feasible. Why would you lie when you know honest mistakes don't bring repercussions? I don't know what to do about it. I don't, I mean, if you guys don't want to live in this environment, let me know because I can
mhm,
be the other guy.
mhm.
But you guys figure it out. Call me when you're done. And I left. These were people who were SWAT team members, who were former special forces, who were like all these. And in 2 hours, the team leader called me. He's like, bro, these guys are on the verge of tears. Like
Huh,
the whole team felt the burden of how one person let down and broke trust. And we know that you take a chance to lead this way because you're the roof, you cover the
yeah,
team.
yeah,
And so that is a very simple thing. I was able to come in and say, hey, I'm disappointed. I don't know how this happened. You guys figure it out.
yeah,
I didn't have to yell. I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to threaten. And it brought the team together. And they all reaffirmed that they wanted to be part of this plan because a joyful environment is such a better place to work in. Don't you agree?
that's good. That's really good. I want to circle back to a question I have for you after we deal with number 8, if we can go there. Um, Number 8 is acceptance. And the driving question here is, what if we accepted the common humanity in everyone we work and interact with?
So, session number one, we had common humanity, right? I feel that we can define humanity across all cultures, timelines, as we have high aspirations and a universal inability to meet our aspirations. And so that's why we have to be able to have grace because we will be disappointed. And without grace, we cannot accept
Hmm.
this humanity. And you've been in workplaces, you've worked with leaders who do not accept less than perfect,
Yep.
who do not accept this. They do not accept your ability to be human.
Yeah.
And that's how the people that are led by these people perceive it. I am waiting to get in trouble because I can't live up to the standard. It's an impossibility.
Yeah. It reminds me of another sort of paradox. You know that one of the driving missions in um our work is this statement: focus on the one with an eye to the many.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And it comes out of, it's both a philosophical, it's also a scientific reality of where, even when you study, most psychological studies are studies of trends across large populations or samples of people, and that's important. But when you look at trends, you sometimes, and it's really looking at averages across people, and so you can miss the nuance of the individual. And I think what's fascinating about this statement around acceptance and this common humanity idea is that there are certain things that we all share. And I say that hopefully very thoughtfully, because I'm not denying cultural differences or ideological differences, because the nuance within those things we share is vast.
Right.
You know what I mean? But this like even the concept of what's called theologically common grace is an interesting thing. That's like what does it mean for us to share certain things and at the same time to understand that there are differences sometimes, even between groups of certain people or between individuals. Like holding that is really difficult because we want to say like, no, we don't share anything in our common humanity. I don't know, like if we don't share a need for grace, I just don't know where we are without it. You know what I'm saying? Like, doesn't every human screw things up?
Absolutely. And the other thing is, every human basically wants similar things, and we have different paths to get there. We want uh, safety and success for us. We want the ability to live in harmony with our family. We want our children to do better than we did across all cultures. I have been a soldier in Iraq. I've sat down with Iraqis, and that's all they want.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone to South America. I've talked with people in Sao Paulo. I've talked with people out in the rural areas, Argentina, all these places. That's what they want generally, right? We just
You
have
know,
different ways of going about it.
yeah, and it's interesting too because I think you're right that there are common things we want, and there are also common things we all probably must consider but may not want. And so, in order to be humans well,
Right.
like so, for example, I don't think all people want grace or want to go there or consider it. Maybe they all want it, but they don't want to go there. And but yet, without it, you know what I mean? Without accepting that need for it, it becomes very difficult, which leads me to my question, Tim. This is a hard one. So Tim and I don't prepare for this. We just go in. We have a lot
Oh,
of
baby.
thoughts and we have a lot of, we've done a lot of work around this. But here's my question. What advice, because the reality is we work with a lot of people who are leaders or who are individual contributors who report to a leader who is not willing to even doesn't take responsibility for themselves or doesn't think that's a thing in their organizations, just isn't considering it. And this concept of common humanity, even the conversation we've had, is kind of not appropriate. It's like I work with so many folks. Most of the folks that we work with are ready to have this conversation, but they work for someone who is just not checked into this, and it's really difficult. So what advice would you have for the person who reports to a person like that?
I talk to people about this all the time. I have a lot of mentees. I have a lot of people that reach out for career advice. Advice number one: polish up your resume and start looking for a new gig, because you don't want to be here. You don't deserve this. Two, Maslow has a hierarchy of needs that generally is true across cultures, phases of humanity. What is your boss missing? What do they need from Maslow's? It is probably a fear of being safe and secure in their position, being seen as competent, not being overridden or embarrassed by their people. Like, these are common things. Start having conversations with your manager, with the team, to figure out, what do they need from us to have this hierarchy of needs satisfied, and start trying to provide it.
Yeah.
Have a little bit of grace, right? Because you don't know what it's like for your manager to go before his managers. Toxic environments breed toxicity. It may not be this person. You and I both agree that employees don't want to be bad employees and leaders don't want to be bad leaders. It just sometimes turns out that way. Sometimes it's because we don't understand how to lead or how to be employed well. And sometimes it's a product of the environment that we're in, breeding fear and insecurity. So those are the two pieces of advice that I would give. And I'll go a step further. If you're the leader that finds yourself having trouble extending grace, having trouble accepting that people are imperfect and human, then I would write down your leadership philosophy and I would distill it to one word. Is it about me or is it about we?
Good. That is very good. we're gonna wrap there, right there. Tim, thank you. It's a good word, y'all.